behave ourselves for a few minutes here or a few seconds.
So we are live, and I'll defer to you as to when we are
Yep.
ready to start the meeting.
Okay. And just for anyone who might already be on the call, we're not legally started quite yet. It's just turning 7. We're waiting for one more member, so we want to maybe allow another minute, and then we'll officially start. This will also give time to have attendees join in. And here he is. Here's Mark. Okay, so let's legally start the public meeting. This is the Thursday, 22nd of April meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission, another virtual meeting. I'll do the roll in just a minute. Well, actually, I'll do it right now. So we'll start with Mark Cendrone.
Present.
Oh, thank you. Peter McNamee.
Here.
Thank you. Joe Morgan.
Here.
And myself, Chair Glenn Richards. And this is just making a quorum, which is 4 members. And my, I probably should state right now, I don't expect it to be an issue, but if we want to move anything forward, it will require unanimous votes, in my opinion, because of the way the ordinance is written, but hopefully that will not be an issue. Okay, members Conrath, Pecknick, and Fay are absent, and we also have on the call Andy Port, city planner, and Caitlin Sullivan, also a planner, and our note taker, Gretchen Joy. So a couple quick rules. We, the commissioners, will have our audio enabled, except when we mute ourselves. Applicants and or their representatives will be unmuted during their presentation time, and they'll also be given opportunities after any public comment periods to respond to any comments. And there'll be more about that when that time comes. Now, I do expect there to be public comment periods this evening. So if you are a member of the public in attendance and you would like to speak, you please use the Zoom function to raise your hand so we can see that you want to speak, and Andy will unmute you. You will also need to unmute yourself on your end. Now, if you're on a telephone, *9 raises a hand or lowers it, and *6 mutes and unmutes. And as per any public comment period, when you are when we do get you hooked up and you're ready to speak, identify yourself with name and address, and then your comments, which should be no longer than 2 minutes. Okay, so that's that. And also just a reminder for my fellow commissioners, it's helpful if you state your name if you're making a motion or seconding, so the note taker can follow that easily. So we have a couple of demo delay applications. The first one on the agenda is 14 Highland Avenue. This is a matter continued from our last meeting on the 8th of April, at which meeting we did take a vote, and it was voted historically significant and considered for preservation. There were some initial plan reviews. The applicant and their architect has pretty significantly altered those plans. So what I'd like to do on this one is I'll first give the applicant, and whether that, by applicant I mean that can be the applicant, it could be their attorney, it could be the architect, or any of the combination of the above. Give them a chance to speak. Then allow the board to ask any questions or clarification if they require any. After that, we will open a public comment period. After that, we'll turn it back, or invite the applicant to respond to any public comment if they would like, and then we'll have the board will deliberate and take a vote. Okay, sound good? So with that, who's speaking for the applicant? Will that be Attorney Mead or someone else, or what?
Mr. Chair, this is
Yes.
Lisa Mead Telling Costa, on behalf of the applicants Michael and Ludia Randall, who are the purchasers of the property. And with me this evening is Eileen Graff, who is the project architect. So Andy, if you could go to the first slide, please. So at the last meeting, as the chair indicated, the board did determine that the property was historically significant, not surprising given the age and the area and location. And as we had said to the board, given the feedback from the neighbors and upon second review, the applicants wanted to redesign what they had originally proposed. And so what they've done is they've redesigned with Eileen's help in keeping with the height of the existing structure and carrying on the design and look and feel of the street. And we have provided elevations that show the comparisons of the houses on both sides. In addition, we've provided photographs, which we're going to go through in a minute also to talk about the plans. I'd remind the board that this project is also subject to a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals, in which time we'll go there for a modification to pre-existing non-conforming structure. So after the board is done with their review, the project still continues on with the review process. So if you go to the next slide, please, Andy. So I'm going to turn it over shortly to Eileen. I just want to remind the board, this is the existing elevations. What you're going to shortly see from Eileen is there's been a dramatic change from the last design, and keeping in the same footprint and no taller than the existing height of the structure. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eileen.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. So as already discussed, it became clear at the last meeting that it was important to assess the massing and the scale of the proposed structure, as well as give it more consideration of its context. So that's what we focused on. And one of the first modifications, and what I think is pretty significant, is making the decision to remove any living space on that top level where we had within the attic space a third level of living. So with our proposed, sorry, can we slide to slide 4, please? Thank you. With that, you can see, as evident in this drawing, we have 2 levels of living space. And so that was one of the first changes that helped to address some of the scale issues. And then the next goal, while massing was one of them, it's also about unifying this sort of disconnected existing home. The way the front massing is lower and then the back was taller. So we're trying to unify that and do it in a way that can keep the scale and massing down. So as what you see in front of you, our proposed solution was to go with a broad gable. So running with the ridge parallel to the street. So the top left drawing shows the front elevation, and you could see that it's this bungalow in feel, similar to the bungalows that are lower on the street and adjacent and lower. And it gives sort of the broad gable is a very typical detail in the bungalow style. And you can see on the front, we've gone over the existing covered porch, and we brought back and sort of gave a notion or a nod that at one point it was open by bringing some detail in with the columns and such, and then brought back the glass as if at a later date, which happens often, they've enclosed it to create an enclosed porch. Above that, you could see the shed roof, shallow in pitch. Again, these are very typical bungalow details, long overhangs, both on the gable ends as well as coming over the front shed. And then if you look to the side elevation, which is the top right, you could see that broad gable starting at the front of the porch on the street side and going all the way back to the existing rear foundation. Shallow pitch. As you go across towards the back, you could see the side of another shed dormer, as well as beyond that, you could see the existing deck that's on the rear and a proposed second story structure that sits above the existing deck footprint. And then if you look to the bottom left, you could see the rear view of that same shed dormer. I want to note that it does have a different pitch than the front dormer and sits a little lower, as well as that shed dormer steps in from the exterior plane of the driveway side of the house. Those 2 details, the stepping in of the dormer and the lowering of the shed roof, were done intentionally in an attempt to control some of the massing on the backside, as this is an area that that there's a change. We just wanted to be conscientious of any concerns of massing where on the backside, and potentially considerations about changes in light and such. So by doing so, by keeping that shed on the back at a lower level, it's no taller than that addition of the second story off the back. And then that bottom right, you can see what would be the northwest side, if I have that correct. Elevation, again, the broadside gable and the addition towards the rear. And on this right side, you could see the front shed dormer. In material choices and such, we've got shingles proposed and the dormers, and then the front covered enclosed porch. We have double hungs proposed, sort of cottage style with 3/1, and then the main body would be in a clapboard. So those are the finishes on the exterior. The other thing I want to point out on that back addition, the second story addition, is while it may not appear as a sort of traditional bungalow style addition, it wouldn't be uncommon that, like anything in our town, that additions do happen over time. So I see it as an example of something that could have happened as the building evolved. So intentionally holding a different sort of style as part of this design.
Pardon me, Eileen, can I say two quick,
Yeah.
real quick questions? The height of that second story addition you were just referring to, how does that compare
Yes.
to the height of the existing rear?
Well,
second
that's a perfect segue. Thank you. So I want to know, thank you. So I want to note that on the left side on the drawing, because I know this was brought up at the last meeting, there were questions about building ridge height, and we've provided that on the left side. But I really think the request for it is because people are trying to understand the scale, the massing. So I've overlaid the existing building to also help convey this. While sometimes I think a dimension number doesn't mean much, but what people do know is that building that exists there today. So I felt like this would help represent the changes and give it in perspective to what exists today. So if we looked at the top left drawing, you could see the ridge height of the rear part of the existing house, and you could see that we haven't gone any taller than it. And in fact, the chimney, the oversized chimney that exists is beyond. Then if you turn to the right, which would be the driveway side, the top right drawing, you could see that taller part, the addition on the rear is actually sitting much taller than the back part of what's being proposed. So there's probably, I would say, about 3 feet plus difference in ridge height from what the existing is to what the rear additions would be. Granted, if you slide towards the peak of the broad gable proposed, that is taller than the front part of the house, the original, but only what would I say, again, in reference to that existing ridge height, the horizontal line of the rear addition there, no taller than that. So only over, and again, sloping because we're at the gable end. And so you could see that from all directions. And I felt that this might be easier for people to relate to because, again, they know that, the neighborhood knows the building that exists there. So hopefully that's providing a good reference point.
Yeah, this was actually very helpful. Thank you. The other quick question I had was, did you guys ever come up with a construction date for the building?
For the original or for the
Yeah,
back?
for the original.
Lisa, am I correct? It was 1939?
Yeah, the lot deeded out in 1939 for the first time had a building on it.
All right. Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think I remember seeing that date. Sorry, I just was forgetting at the moment. Thanks. Sorry for the interruption.
And then actually also to help, if we scroll to the next drawing relating to scale again, I wanted to give reference to what exists in the neighborhood. So this drawing is representing the proposed house, and it's gave 1.5-story presence with that shed dormer above, next to 12 Highland on the right and 16 Highland on the left. And I referenced the site plan to help give accurate separation between these buildings to represent it as most accurately as I could. So as you could, while I didn't show all of 16 Highland, it's enough to represent the 2.5-story structure that it is. So you can see that it is in scale sitting somewhere between the two in form, in massing and such.
And
And
it's
then-
the spacing, but I'm sorry, and the spacing, did I understand you correctly that the spacing on in this rendering here or drawing is correctly scaled to what is actually there?
It is, yes. I use the site plan, and because the abutters are measured on the site plan, are delineated on the site plan, I use that to find the dimension to spacing. I will acknowledge that the vertical might be off by some inches, because that is not information that's absolutely present, but using photos, et cetera, and knowing that that part of the street and most of the street, right, is climbing from top ends all the way up to the hospital. So that this is suggesting, as you know, the street, there is some grade change. So if we can scroll to the next drawing, I've applied the same sort of overlay to help show how the house sits today versus what is being proposed. Again, trying to hold that back ridge line of the existing addition as the sort of max ridge line that we're proposing. And then if we scroll through some photos, here you could see it in context. Materials, such scale, the slope that we were talking about going up the hillside. This is from the downhill Toppins Lane side, and then the next. A little bit further down the hill. One more. And from the opposite direction, coming from Rawson, coming down, you could see it as well. So it really does this from the uphill side. You could see how roof pitch, etc. If you can imagine 12 Highland, that's the one right after 14 Highland. It's the after the White House, right? If you can imagine and use that as the example of the slope that you would be feeling with a shed, it's similar for this house. So the idea that from the street presence, you're feeling one story, but that roof is going to climb away as you go deeper into the lot. So not a huge presence as far as the wall frontage and scale to the street experience.
Yeah. If I may say so, it almost looks like it's kind of inspired by that number 12 to a certain extent.
Right. Well, all of those are such wonderful bungalows on that street. So, which brings me to sort of my conclusion that you know, we did feel that we wanted to acknowledge its association by proximity of the sort of bungalow experience there, but we also didn't want to replicate exactly what's there, because I don't think that's appropriate either. It also lends itself to something different because the width of the building is narrow, narrower than the others on the street. This building is only 23 wide. So right off the bat, we can't have the same kind of presence as the other bungalows have, because we don't have the width that they have, which are more like 30, 34, 35, 36 wide. So the way this one is designed, we felt like it was a good way to support and acknowledge the bungalow style, but yet be something different, and almost this sort of transitional piece to the area that starts to go 2.5 story, like you see in 16 Highland here, the yellow one. And then actually, if you go to the next slide, across the street, these have evolved over time. And so these are 2.5 stories as well. So this is directly across the street. So, so that concludes my comments on the architecture. I'll pass it back to Lisa, but I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the design.
Okay,
So
thank you.
thank you, Eileen. I really don't have much more to say. We're hopeful that the board understands I think dramatic, I think as the chair kind of acknowledged, there's some significant changes here that picks up on the setting and the context, but also the evolution up Highland and, turning a house that has had a lot of additions and changes to it that don't really work for living into something that can be used and brought back to life.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Mead. So before we go to public comment, I'll just ask my fellow commissioners, does anyone have a question or comment for either the attorney, the applicant, or the architect regarding what we just saw and heard? Doesn't look that way. Okay. In that case, we'll have a public comment period. So again, as I said at the opening of the meeting, if you would like to speak during this public comment period, please keep your comments brief. Do raise your hand so we know to unmute you. We'll unmute you, or I should say Andy will, on this end, and you'll have to also unmute yourself and using the Zoom controls on your end, and then you'll be able to make your comment. So I'll open the public comment period and ask Andy. It looks like we have a hand raised.
Yeah, first commenters, we have our Stacy and Rob McMillan, it looks like.
Yeah,
Okay.
hi, it's Robert Macmillan from 16 Highland Ave. I'd first like to thank the applicants for the revision of the plan. I think it's a marked improvement on the first go around. A couple comments from our point. I think in the first historic meeting, it was noted that the additions that had happened over time had really led the structure to feel disconnected from the rest of the street. And I think as Attorney Mead said, that's been noted. And, in particular, the rear extension to the building feels as though we're somewhat perpetuating the mistakes that have already been, again, with the redesign of this building. I would also like to comment on something that was raised earlier, the comment about remaining in the existing footprint. I don't feel that's true. The, again, rear extension out over the deck is not remaining in the existing footprint. We also have concerns around the potential enclosing of that rear deck over time. As architect Kraft noted on the front deck, as often happens in Newburyport, decks get enclosed. And I feel that this could be a backdoor route into expanding the property without going through the appropriate steps. And then finally, as architect Graf herself said, their extension is not in keeping with the bungalow style. And, to me, that's really the whole point of this meeting, is to try and keep the feeling of the street and the bungalow style as you rise up the hill from Toppins. And, we generally are supportive of development, generally supportive of, people being able to develop properties that they've purchased. But certainly the front of the house, the elevation and everything seems to be a marked improvement, although the rear addition, in our opinion, is still a long way from keeping with that bungalow style.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other comments? I don't see any hands. Do you, Andy?
I do not. Actually, Stephanie Niktich would like to speak.
Okay, go ahead.
Stephanie Nikitich, 93 High Street. I don't live in a bungalow, but I'm a fan of this architectural period and form of historic housing. I just want to thank the commission and abutters for this serious attention the character of this neighborhood and streetscape is being given. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Okay, well, now another.
And now seeing no others.
Okay, don't forget to lower your hand. Oh, there she goes. Okay, not seeing any hands either, Andy. So we'll formally close the public comment period. And before we deliberate, Attorney Mead, or Eileen, do you have any response or comment you'd care to make in response to the public comment? It's not required, it's just your option.
Sure, I would first, then I don't know if Eileen wants to talk about the rear addition. So as this board knows, when this house was done, it was originally done as a, by right house, as were most of these houses along the street. In the last 5 to 10 years, I would respectfully suggest that the city has been ever vigilant on people doing things that occur without permits on homes that are now currently under permit. So this house will be under the control of the city via the special permit for nonconformities, and any changes that occur from the plans that are approved would have to go back to the zoning board in this instance for any changes. And so, I don't know what else to say except for that what's approved is approved, and any changes to it would have to be approved in another meeting with the zoning board of appeals. And Eileen, you can talk a little bit more about the addition on the back, which is purposefully not seen from the street in order to retain the streetscape. It's one of the reasons it's lower than the ridge and pulled in, and provides the living space that was given up by the height of the house.
Thank you. And it's exactly that, the intent of that, a little bit of added space. Again, in totality, they are adding 255 square feet. So not a lot of square footage as a whole. The addition on the back was done with intent to keep it small and minimal. The wall height in that area is lower than the rest of the second floor, just to keep again, intention to keep all those roof lines above the back dormers as low as possible. Keep in mind, if you look at that bottom right drawing, that addition is happening at the back of the existing house. Well, front to back, that's about 45 feet long. So think about really how much from the street are you seeing. It's a very minimal exposure. Definitely not seen from the downhill side. Granted, you see it from the uphill side, but it's pretty far from the sidewalk as far as the visual presence. And hopefully, and the design intent was there in that the broad gable was the element that we really wanted to emphasize. So that was the sort of design thought when working around that back addition. Granted, it's not we could try to put more bungalow details on it, but really to me it's about the form and the massing staying as small as possible. Right. On the rear, I wasn't as concerned about the bungalow details.
Yeah, and actually I think historical, what's the word I'm looking for, philosophy, shall we say, is consistent with your earlier remarks about when you're, if you've got a structure that's fairly reasonably uniform, which this one, taking away that little back piece, your redesign would become fairly uniform in style. So it's usually recommended that an obvious addition, not be somehow tried to magically blend in, but be appropriate and fitting, but not necessarily mimicking the original. While I have the floor here, and before I ask my colleagues for a comment, there was a letter from Mr. and Mrs. McMillan, and there were some questions in it that was somewhat alluded to. So let me just take a second to respond to some of that. One, Attorney Mead already, I think, addressed, in that if we vote to approve these plans and give the okay to proceed, that means that the applicant is held to this specific set of plans, and any change would have to be re-reviewed. So that was a potential concern. And if there was any in the future, a further change to the roof line, that would trigger a historical commission review. What would not trigger historical, like the bit about enclosing the area underneath that rear addition, that would not be something that would be under the purview of the historical commission. It may, you know, you get into an area of zoning regulations that, you know, where I'm not an expert. There may be an issue with that zoning might have to deal with as far as if there's any nonconformity, and it would certainly be under the purview of the building commission and other, you know, various zoning laws there in effect. And if it makes people feel a little more comfortable, there has been some recent changes made by the city where when an applicant comes in, whether it's a builder, an owner, whomever, they are required to sign an affidavit that they understand that they are submitting plans, and that if these plans are approved, they must adhere to those plans or suffer various consequences. I don't know exactly what the consequences may be. You may have seen in a recent case recently, another part of the city where the applicant had to suffer a considerable delay in an occupancy permit because of some liberties they had taken with going beyond what they were specifically permitted to do at the time. So there are a number of protections about that. And last thing I'll say is, as Attorney Mead mentioned, there will be a hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals for the certain nonconformities. So there were a couple of issues that were raised by abutters that have nothing to do with the Historical Commission. Like, I think there was a, you know, a lot line dispute, and there was some other, you know, things. If you're just concerned about overall size or you know, impact on lighting or whatever, that would be an appropriate place to show up and express your concerns. Okay, so having said all that, let me turn to my colleagues here, Mr. Morgan, Mr. McNamee, and Mr. Sandrone. Anybody have like to make any comment on what we've seen? And we need to hopefully in the very near future, as in minutes, take a vote on whether or not this plan can be approved. Mark, I see you unmuted yourself. Did you have any comment?
I just want to say that there was an obvious attempt to improve the design from what had been proposed in the first round. So I find that rather encouraging. The rear portion certainly seems to stand out in a rather awkward manner, and that's more of an aesthetic type of thing. But otherwise, I think the architect has certainly tried very hard to integrate the design into what the neighborhood has for architecture.
Yep. Thank you, Mark. And Joe, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Richards. I wanted to ask, first of all, procedurally, we will presumably vote on whether this is preferably preserved. Is that correct?
We already did. And
we have.
Yes, we voted it was historically significant and preferably preserved.
We did that at the last meeting.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
If we hadn't, or if we had voted it not preferably preserved, we wouldn't be having this hearing today. Actually.
I still have difficulties understanding this process. Because my understanding is that we would do separate votes on preferably preserved following public comment and our own deliberations. But because the notion of preferably preserved in this context might lead people to believe that the amount of intervention and restructuring of this building would not leave it preserved at all, but has completely changed it. Yeah. So I think we, as a commission, talking about preferably preserving a structure, a historical structure, we do have to somehow reconcile the fact that this building is no longer the building that is there existing. And to what extent this design, this rework of the existing structure is preserving the original character of the building. Now,
Yeah.
So that's a preface. That's a preface to saying that personally, I feel that there's really not much worth preserving on the original structure historically. Okay. However, based on the definition of historically significant that I think I read the last time, one of the criteria that can be used to designate a structure as being historically significant is its relationship to its neighborhood and to its art, to its historical context. So in that regard, just in that regard, I would designate this I would designate this historically significant building as preferably preserved, but only as it applies to that criterion. But I believe that once again, we have missed out procedurally on the ability to discuss this. I think a separate vote would have been required to do that, or it would be called for in order to have clarity on exactly what we mean by preferably preserved.
Yeah.
But to let me finish here.
Yeah, sure.
That I don't have personally, I have no objection to what's been proposed here in any way whatsoever. I actually went to the neighborhood. I found precedents for the roof line, which is the only thing that really bothered me a little bit, the complete change of the ridge direction. But 2 blocks down on Lafayette at numbers 27 and 29, we find two side-by-side precedents that that provide this front elevation with including the dormer. So I feel pretty comfortable about what's been proposed here. It's just it doesn't have anything to do with the original building. So
yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt.
I'm done. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, let me just respond briefly. It's unfortunate that the specific wording of the ordinance is such that it can lead to what you've correctly identified as an apparent contradiction, and that we're not, quote, preserving the structure per se. The way I think of it is that there's the first option is we look at a structure and that's might be 75 or more years old, but if we don't view it as historically significant period, like there was the one at the last meeting that was down on the Route 1, it's it's not historically significant, and that's the end of the discussion. They can do a demo, whatever they want to do. Now if it is historically significant, usually the preferably preserved, actually what it is considered, I think it's worded considered for preservation. And they also use the phrase preferably preserved. They use both of those. And the idea, or the way I think of it, is that what it does is it opens the door to a public hearing, which we just had, or actually we're in the middle of now, with the applicant, members of the public being able to comment in our deliberations as to what the quote, the demolition plan, which obviously includes both what's to be demolished and what's to be built in its place. So the demolition plan is reviewed, and the board is able to make an up or down vote as to whether it feels that those plans are appropriate. And in my tenure on the board, which isn't humongously long, but long enough to have seen quite a few of these go by, I've seen a number of cases that this reminds me of, where there's a historic structure in that it's old. It has been heavily modified over the years, especially in this case with that, a lot of these additions we've seen throughout the city. You got to remember that Newburyport was not the well-off community it is today in years past. And a lot of these additions and things were not particularly well architected, planned, or even executed in terms of their structural integrity. So it's often, well, I don't know if often, but frequently, or not infrequently, we do have a case like this where we have perhaps as a new owner, but someone who is willing to take a property. It's in a good environment, a good neighborhood. It has some features that are desirable, but in other ways, it really needs to be updated. And so they decide to make a fairly significant transformation and do it in a way that, what's the net result going to be? Like, if one of the ultimate things I rely on, what's the effect on the historical value of the neighborhood, and not just the structure, but the neighborhood? Is the net result going to be detrimental to property values, the look of the neighborhood and all that? Or on the other hand, might it in fact have a positive impact? And I think I agree with Mark that the overall design, especially from the front, falls into that category. I think the architect has done a very creditable job of unifying the structure, making it from the streetscape actually a little bit more significantly better blended, if you will, or consistent, and take in that relatively small amount of living space they felt they needed to get, and tucking it in the back in as inconspicuous way as they could, pretty much. So now you've heard my view on it as well. So we didn't hear from Peter. Did you want to, do you have any thoughts on this?
Can I just say one thing,
Sure.
in response, Chair? I am looking at the meeting minutes, and it shows that the last meeting, Christopher Fay moved the structure is historically significant and considered for preservation.
Right.
So presumably that's what we're doing now, is considering it for preservation. You're saying that no vote is required on that.
Well, that was the vote.
You're saying no separate vote is required
right.
on I see. Okay.
Right. Not a separate vote, because it was voted for historically significant and considered for preservation. That's the way the ordinance is worded. And it's a little inconsistent. The ordinance itself is not perfectly consistent in that it also uses the phrase preferably preserved, meaning in a way that essentially means the same thing. So
if it pleases the chair, I would like to get clarification on this, because that's not the way we've talked about it recently in the last couple of meetings, where we have clarified this point, saying that there is a separate vote required by the ordinance, and it's shown in the it's in the flow chart, the decision flow chart that was presented, I believe, by Commissioner Pecknick. And I do believe we ought to get clarity on this, because I still am. I've been doing this for a year now with you, and I understand. I understand that you're used to doing it a certain way. I just like to understand why we have something called preferably preserved if we don't vote on it. It seems that it's very clear that we are supposed to vote separately for structures that are preferably.
Well, I have the very flow chart to which you refer, right?
Okay.
Vote number one is to take a vote on if it's historically significant and considered for preservation. That's the first vote.
We did that last time.
Which we did last meeting. Vote number two is it, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Is it preferably preserved? No demolition permit may be issued. So, yeah. Okay. Now I see where the confusion is. So the way I've been running this is that, we could take a straight vote on, is it preferably preserved, yes or no? If we say yes, then that kicks off a 12-month demo delay, during which time, if plans are presented to which we approve, we can lift the demo delay.
Right. I think that's what we have to do, but I think we can turn right around and lift the demo delay if everyone on the board has no objections. So
correct.
I'm just arguing, Chair Richards, that there's a procedural a sequence here that we should probably.
I hear you. And we can do that.
Sorry to be a pain, but I just I'm frustrated. You can hear that I'm frustrated because I keep hearing that there's supposed to be a certain way that it's done, and we're not doing it that way. So.
Okay, and we can, so just so everyone's clear, what we'll do is we'll take there'll be a motion as to whether the structure is preferably preserved, or it'll be phrased positively. The board feels the structure is preferably preserved, right? We'll vote on that. If that passes, that means we can then go ahead and finalize the discussion of these plans in front of us and take a third vote as to whether we want to approve these plans. Is that, I see
That's
you
the way
nodding.
I
Yeah.
understand that it should be. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so everyone's clear on that. I see Mark is nodding and Peter's off my screen. He's nodding too. Okay, so we're in agreement. So it's someone, so Joe, would you care to make that particular motion since you got it?
I move that 14 Highland is significant historically and should be preferably preserved.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Mark seconds. All right, so let me go around for the roll call. Mark, your vote on
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me get organized here. Okay, Peter?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
Yes.
Okay, and the chair also votes yes. Okay, so let me just make a note here. So I get this all straight. Okay, is there any further discussion on the design? We've heard public comment on it. We've heard from the applicant and architect on it. We've made some of our own comments. Is there anything else to say, or is someone prepared to make a motion? It would should take an affirmative form, such as a motion to approve the plans as submitted.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the plans as submitted.
Okay, that was Peter. Okay. Is there a second?
I second that. This is Joe.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. So we'll take another vote here. Mark Syndrome.
Yes.
Okay. Peter McNamee.
Yes.
Okay. I was a little broken up. I think I heard yes.
Yes.
Okay. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Okay. And the chair also votes yes. Okay. So we did it formally in in strict observance of the Marquis of what's his name of just Johnsbury's or whatever his rules. Okay, so back to the applicant, Attorney Mead and Eileen and company. You, as long as you adhere to these plans, as I'm sure you know, you may proceed without further demo delay.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the board's consideration.
Yep, you're quite welcome.
Thank you all for your time.
You're welcome, Ms. Graff. Thank you. And by the way, Eileen, before you go, my compliments. I think you did a nice job on the design of this. Just
Thank
my
you.
own personal opinion.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, moving to the next item on the agenda. And I hope I last. I've been up early this morning. 35 Ting Street, just a few blocks over from me. Is the applicant here and able to talk to us?
Hi, yes, this is David Keary, Keary Design, representing Mark and Beth Seary.
Okay, thank you, David. Are you the architect, David?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Mark and Beth wanted to renovate the home. It needs some upgrades. It's exterior, interior. And as part of that, they wanted to add a dormer to the rear of the property, as you can see in the site plan. And therefore we are here. The home is a bungalow, so this must be bungalow night. And this one is a great, I love this home, and it's got a beautiful rear property. Actually, if you're going through this, maybe the next one could be a couple of the existing conditions photos, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, Dave. Sorry, I have for your application, there's a couple of drawings. So let me just grab is it the elevations or?
You could do the existing elevations, and there were also some photos submitted.
Sure. Do you want the elevations first or the photos?
The photos, if you could, please. Thank you.
Sure.
That's not it.
Yeah, sorry, just shuffling through here. We had some other images opened.
Clearly, that's not it, huh?
There we go. Sorry, we had, there are a couple of other photos for other presentations.
No problem.
Uh,
Okay, this is from the rear. This is the only side that does not have a dormer presently, and this is where we're proposing to add it. Just because we're looking at this, I'll tell you there, it's got a small door and a small window, and Beth and Mark, as part of this project, really want to open the house better to the rear yard and the view and their beautiful gardens. So that's existing from the rear. That's the side looking down Ting Street. So you can see the rear property with their garage at the front porch of the bungalow. And both dormers, the front and both side dormers are the same. They're symmetrical. The left side has this later added chimney, I'm sure, that we would like to remove as well as part of making the house better. So that's the existing conditions, and then we can look at the existing conditions elevations as well. East, which is EC, drawing EC1.
Is that on the south side of Ting Street, Mr. Curie? I mean, excuse me, the east side?
As you head down Ting, it's on the right.
All right, okay, yes, the east
toward
side.
Water Street, yes. So yes, this is the just what we saw before, the front porch on the upper right side, showing the two dormers left and right, and the upper dormer. So the rear dormer that we're going to propose will really be the exact same size as the front dormer. It'll be detailed a little differently, but I'll get to that next. But then just going around the page, top right is front, top left is the right side of the building, which we saw the photo of, and the bottom left shows that chimney, actually shows two chimneys, which we would like to remove as part of this project. And then the rear elevation is the bottom right of this page, existing. And there's a small deck there too that's kind of worn out that they're also going to redo. They're going to make something smaller and do a patio there instead. We could look at the A2, which is the proposed elevations, please.
So there's a second existing chimney. I didn't notice it on the photos, and I assume so both chimneys are to go, and there'll be some other method of exhausting whatever it is those chimneys were put in for.
That's correct. There will be the one internal to the house. If you look at this, actually we're looking at A2, so I'll show you the lower left-hand drawing shows that external one, which serviced a gas fireplace in the home. Might have been actually a pellet stove. My clients are here; they could tell you. For the other owner prior to them, I believe. And then the other chimney services the furnace in the basement, which they plan to side vent. And
okay.
From this side, I guess, we can look at this proposed drawing. So again, the front, there is no change when you look at the upper right. That will remain the same, other than the fact that those chimneys are going away. To the left side, we're adding some additional windows on the rear to pick up the character style of the bungalow windows and the ones that exist out front on the porch side. And when you go down to the lower left, two small windows there as well. You can see the side of a little balcony we have outside that we've designed as part of this rear dormer, which when you look at it from the lower right-hand drawing, the proposed east elevation, that's the new rear property. So as you can see, we've added some more windows and made it open more to that backyard. The upper deck is something my clients have always dreamed of doing up there. And so that'll be a little office space with a little balcony to walk out on, about 3.5 feet out onto the outside of the facade there. So that's the gist of what we're doing. We're adding that dormer. We do have a model view. That color model shows it. perhaps best in 3D. If you could turn to that one.
Yeah, just takes a second to
Yeah.
swap them out.
No worries. So from each side, left and right, kind of looking at that rear addition, that is the dormer that we are proposing with the little balcony above new kitchen windows or rear door. And I will say one thing that I heard in the last meeting talking about, they will stick to those plans verbatim, right? That's it. I will say that the steps going down, we may not have a railing on each side. We may, do those slightly differently, but if that, I don't think that the lower steps are a major, they just want to be able to get to their patio. So from a design standpoint, I would say those may get slightly altered in terms of railing or non-railing steps wrapping around perhaps rather than straight. But other than that, the building itself is completely designed.
And is it clapboarded today?
No, it's a red cedar shingle, very
Oh, okay.
characteristic of that
And
style.
is that what you're proposing?
Yes, they would like to redo the shingles on the rear. They honestly, the trim around the building, a lot of it is, as you can see, pretty
Oh,
wavy.
okay, there it is.
They'd like to repair where necessary. Some of the shingles are quite old. Underneath those shingles, there is stucco. This was at one time a stucco home, probably back in the 20s. So there are they and I love the shingled look. It's in keeping with this style. As to whether or not they completely reshingle, that's a budgetary thing. So for now, they plan to redo the rear, which is where they're doing their work, and patch where they need to around the minimally in areas where they have side windows that they're redoing.
Okay. Okay, and I'm a little bit remiss because I should have explained that it initially wasn't technically necessary to go through your whole plan, but it's not a problem because we first have to vote as to whether or not it's historically significant and considered for preservation. So that'll be the first vote, and then it'll be just like the prior property. We'll take a vote as to whether it's considered for, whether it's preferably preserved. And if so, we'll take a third vote since you've, your plan's already here, but we'll have that'll be after a public hearing and so on. So it'll be very similar to the last property, only for the Highland Avenue one, we had already voted that it was historically significant and considered for preservation.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Were you finished? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yes, no, all set. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, so board, again, step one is whether it's historically significant and to be considered for preservation. Does anyone have a comment before or we can go right to making a motion on that if someone feels so moved? No pun intended. Don't be shy.
I move that the structure is historically significant and should be considered for preservation. This is Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
Mark Center, and I second.
Okay, thank you, Mark. So we'll go around the horn here. Mark Syndrome.
Yes.
Thank you. Peter McNamee.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair also concurs with a yes. So we will now have a public hearing, part of which we've kind of already covered the material of, which is the applicant's presentation of what it is they would like to do. So it's this one case, it's pretty straightforward. I don't think it's is going to require much more discussion than that. But before I open, so I'll open a public hearing, public comment period. But before I do, does anyone on the board have any questions or need any clarification from the architect? No, seeing not, okay, sounds like no. Okay, so then I will formally open a public comment period. If you wish to make a public comment, please use the Zoom function to raise a hand so we know that you're out there and want to comment, and you'll be recognized. I can tell my ice is melted. It's not jangling around in there anymore. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, right, Andy?
Correct.
Okay, so we'll then close the public comment period. Board, any comments, questions, deliberative or otherwise, anyone would like to make regarding the proposal before us?
I do have a question.
Sure.
And this is more out of my own ignorance, but in the style of the bungalow, which is the style that we have here,
Mhm.
is it appropriate to have such a balcony extend out and be added to the dormer? And that
Yeah,
question is directed towards the architect specifically.
actually, I can comment on that too, but go ahead, Mr. Curie.
Precedent is probably out there. There's all kinds of iterations of bungalow. We are breaking that roof. I think breaking the roof in an aesthetically pleasing way, aligning and centering, aligning windows below, and so I think, given the fact that this is a 2021 project as well, that some small, I guess I'd say that a building such as this, there are one of those where you have rules and then iterations of the rules, or perhaps a less appealing way to break the roof line would be that old chimney, as a for instance, not very well thought through, versus this where we've centered this and in some ways kind of embraced, I hope, the bungalow quality here of the building.
Yeah, thank you. And Mark, I would comment that I can recall actually during my tenure on this commission, somewhat similar case was what's the era of this house, Mr. Curie? Do you know what the date of this house is?
1920-ish. It says
20-ish.
1920 on the
Okay.
city record.
Okay, there was a house, I think it was a bit older, but it's actually was being redeveloped. Was right on State Street, across the street from the Dalton House, and they did something kind of similar in the back of that. In their case, it was, and I have seen both shingle style housing, that architectural style often called shingle style, which is kind of stylistically similar to the bungalow style. It was not uncommon to have balcony-like structures, and the kind of brackets you've got there, I think, are also kind of appropriate to that style. Often they would be inset. Mr. Curie, you're probably familiar with that, where they would cut into the roof. So it would be sort of a negative space, so that the floor of the balcony would be kind of inside the footprint more than outside the footprint of the house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But those were perhaps a bit more common. But from what I've seen both around town and just from the architectural styles, and I'll love to hear from our former architect, Mr. Morgan, and see if he agrees with me on this, that it's not a gross violation of the kind of the stylistic concept of this kind of house. So if you love, I don't really want to put you on the spot there, Joe, but I'd love to hear if you have any opinion on that.
Well, I'm not a historicist really when it comes to not as much as you are, Glenn, but I I just, in terms of my eye, what I like the design. I think it's picks up on some of the brackets, some of the detail. So in other words, it deals with the overall symmetry of the facade. It's very strong. I mean, you look at the symmetry of this, that's one thing that strikes you right away. But then there's the subdivisions of the way the fenestration, the doors, the balcony rails, all of that relate to the existing spacing of the fenestration below and the door. I think it all works very nicely. It's almost like, oh, it's almost too perfect. You know, it works just the way you would want it to work. I think it's great. So.
And just so I'm clear on this, on the drawing we're looking at, this A2 proposed exterior elevations, the other dormers and everything, those are all so that they're shown here as they are. It's a little bit like in the upper left drawing, it's a little hard to see because the way that the texture of the the way the CAD drawing is, or whatever it is, it's not broken there where the actual ridge line goes up from the eave up to the ridge. You know what I mean? So it's like looking at the left and right dormers there, but for we saw from the renderings that all 4 dormers, the 3 existing and the 1 proposed, they're all kind of, well, let's see, your new one, is your new one slightly wider, or does it just have additional windows, or is it wider than the other dormers, or it just looks that way because of the fenestration?
The front and rear are both 12 wide. What are I think the sides are, I'm sorry, they're slightly wider.
Oh, okay.
So the rear dormer is a mirror image of the front dormer.
I see.
In terms of its massing.
Oh, okay. A little bit like Joe is saying, almost too perfect. Okay. All right. Thank you. Mark, have we kind of answered your question? We've kind of talked around it a bit.
Kinda.
Okay. I'll take that as a lukewarm yes.
I don't
Okay.
think it gets better than this, Mark.
Any other comments or questions? And if not, we can move along, and maybe someone feels they can put forward a motion that, well, the next vote we need to take whether this should be preferably preserved. Someone feel moved to make that particular motion?
I'll make that motion.
That's Peter, right?
That's Peter.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second it, Peter. So let's go around the board here. Mr. Cendron.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Peter McNamee.
Yes.
Mr. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, chair is also yes. Do we need to have further discussion before taking a vote on whether we want to take a vote on whether or not to approve the plans as submitted?
No.
No.
Okay, is someone making that motion?
I make a motion to approve the plans as presented by the architect and the owners.
Okay, that was Mark. Is there a second?
Second that. This is Joe.
Okay, thank you, Joe and Mark. Okay, Mark, your vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Peter, your vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm also in agreement with that. Mr. Curie, I think, fairly modest change, but I think you've done a reasonably good job of doing, executing a change that's very much minimizing any negative impact, if not, to the structure, for which we're most appreciative.
Well, thank you very much.
I'm really glad to see those chimneys go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't even notice the other one, but yeah, that one on the side, that was clearly what they sometimes call an
Unless that aids to the too perfect factor that Joe was mentioning. maybe the chimney should stay.
Yeah, and also we have the energy efficiency thing to look at. Anyway, okay, but if they're side venting, they're probably going to a more efficient heating unit anyway. So, okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mr. Carey. You're all set. You do not have well, technically you had a 12-month delay for a couple of minutes there, but which has been lifted.
Very good. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, that was Ting Street. Okay, we have one more. Let me check my demo delay hearing, and that's 7-9 Hancock Street, a two-family house. And that was Mr. Eric Premack, I believe, is the developer there. We've met Mr. Premack in the past, at least some of us have. I think it was Purchase Street. Anyway, are you with us, Eric?
I'm here.
You're here. Good. Okay. So,
Good evening.
good evening. So let's try to do this in an efficient and organized way. As you heard from the previous two things, first we need to take the vote on whether that particular property or structure is historically significant and considered for preservation, and then whether it's preferably preserved, and finally, if so, we can and we we can vote on whether we are good with your demo plan and demo/rebuild plan. So for brief discussion on the historical significance of the house. I didn't see a form, it was not listed as contributing, but it is old. Did you, not having it in front of me, what was the date, approximate date on this? Looks like it's basically from latter half of the 19th century, just looking at the overall proportions and structure. Did you have a date on this, Mr. Premack?
I think it was on the card was, I think you're correct, was 1850, 1860.
Yeah, that looks about right.
Yeah.
Okay. So as with other structures dating from that era, it's probably gone through a couple of alterations and changes, but that is what it is. It's certainly elderly enough to be considered historically significant and considered for preservation. Is there any discussion before taking that particular motion? Yes? No? No comments? Yeah, Mark,
No comment.
Would someone care to make a motion that it is historically significant and can consider for preservation?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we can.
This building is historically significant.
Okay, and consider for preservation. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that. This is Joe.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So, Mr. Mark Syndrome,
Yep.
your vote on that.
Yes.
Okay, Peter, are you?
Yes.
This okay? Joe?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll go along with that. Okay, so next we have a review of the demolition plan, and which includes a public hearing. So first we'll proceed as we did for the other one, Eric, where we'll allow you to first present your plans. We'll allow any members of the public who wish to make a comment to do so if there are any, and then we will, and you can then respond to those if necessary or appropriate, and then we'll have our deliberation and vote. So why don't you take it from there?
Okay, you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so the houses consists of three sections. You have the probably the original front section, a stepped in middle section or rear section, and then a small back porch. So the request is to add a second story to the middle or rear section, just to go up one story. Right now it's a 2-unit house, 2-family house, and there's only one bathroom in each unit, which is in the kitchen on the first floor. So, and there's 2 bedrooms in the upstairs. So what I'm trying to do is put a second story on the back of the house so that we can increase the bedroom and a full bathroom on the second floor for each unit. The whole front of the house will remain exactly the same. And the footprint of the house, of the whole house, will remain exactly the same. If you see from the pictures of the house, it's on a very tight footprint. It's only about a 7-foot setback on each side. And I think about an 8-foot setback in the rear. There's no driveway, there's no parking. So again, with the exception of the addition, keeping everything as is. You can go to the next slide.
Quick question, Eric. Looks like in this, what we're viewing now, on the front part of the house, it looks like there is living space on the, like a partial third floor there?
That's correct. It's more like a, it is partial living space. I would say it's a little bit more than a walk-up attic, but there is partial living space, but I'm not extending up until that third floor. I'm only extending on the second floor.
Okay, correct. That's kind of what I got from your plans. All right, thanks. Please continue.
Sure. So that's there's the front elevation of the house. Go next. The side view, this is the existing. So as you can see, it's got a, both roof lines are similar on the front section, on the back section. And then there's the small back porch in the rear. Next, left side, basically mirror images on both sides, with the exception of the windows that are in the rear section. One side has a 3-window, and on the left side, it's got a little bit of a bay window in it, which we're keeping as well.
You're referring that last back section as a porch, but it looks fully enclosed with a little shed roof. Is that, why do you call that a porch? Any particular reason?
It is a porch. It's just a rear porch, screen windows. It has no heat right now, and that's what they've been using it for. And I'm not changing that either. I'm leaving that porch.
Okay, thanks.
So it's not living space, in other words. Not insulated underneath. Next slide. And there you can see from the rear section. So you see how it's stepped in on the sides a little bit. I think it's 28 feet on from side to side in the front, and it's 24 feet from side to side in that back section. So we're going up, and it's 17 deep. So we're going up 17 by 24 on one story. Next. So proposed front elevation stays the same. Next. And there would be the side elevation. So instead of the slanted roof, we would have a flat roof on that second story. And the back porch would remain the same. Keeping all windows, all openings. We put one window on the rear section that kind of matches in the same spot as the existing front elevation, 6/6 windows, keeping all the doors the same, keeping all the trim the same. You can go to the next one. Same thing from the left side, just one window there. And then if you look at the next slide, the rear elevation, there's one window on each side from the back. And the idea of the flat roof too is if we went up with a higher roof, you wouldn't be able to utilize those back windows on the third floor. And then the rest of the renovations is just in the interior of the house. If you want the next, you can see just other pictures. So there's the front. Next. There's the side. You can see the rear section. So the front side has siding on it, has vinyl siding, and the rear section has cedar shingles. I am not opposed to either. I would either do the whole back section in siding, or I could do it in cedar shingles, the whole section, and would probably give it some contrast and look the same way it does, as is. Next one. Little bit of a close-up of that back section, the cedar shingle and that little bay window. This is from the left side of the house.
Pardon the interruption, Eric. Just want to clarify something.
Sure.
I think I heard you say the front section is got vinyl siding today.
Correct.
Okay, and we can see the rear has got the cedar shingles. So what were you saying about that? Do you plan to keep the vinyl, or were you thinking of taking that off? There's probably clapboards underneath. We don't know. Maybe you know or don't know what kind of shape they're in. Did you have any plans to change that siding in the front?
No, I didn't have any plans to change the siding. The siding's all in good shape. The shutters are in good shape. The windows, I like the 6/6 windows. I like the arch on the windows and the door frames and everything. So there really isn't any reason. The only thing I was thinking was to match the vinyl siding in the back, but it would certainly go a long way towards helping the house age, but I don't have any problem putting cedar shingles on the second story and keeping that, so the front is vinyl and the back is cedar. I would do either, whatever, if you guys had something that you would prefer, I'm open to it. You can go to the next one. So again, there's that close up. The next one. And there's the right side. And next one. I think there's a shot. Yeah, so same thing. There's the close up of the right side.
Right.
Yep. Next one, I think maybe from the rear. Yeah. So there's the little, you see the back porch. And yeah, so back porch is built on just a wood frame. It's not on a foundation, so it's not insulated. It's just a
Right.
3-season porch, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's about it. It's pretty cut and dry, pretty simple request.
Okay. Yeah, sounds relatively straightforward as far as
Yeah.
the exterior stuff. And I take it that those two, it's a little bit, well, not sure if it's odd or not, but it looks like, I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, that those, either side kind of looks like a front of a house. I take it that's the 2, 7 and 9, the two addresses. One address has got, the left side, the other's the right side.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any clarification or questions from my colleagues on the board for Mr. Primack? Not seeing anyone. One nice thing about having only 4 of us is I can see all 4 of you once. I can see if you're like gesticulating that you need to say something or not. Oh, Joe has raised a hand. Thank you, Joe.
So a question from Mr. Primack. Did you consider, presumably you've got a budget here, you want to add these interior spaces, would you consider further renovation of the historic exterior by re-siding the entire structure?
I honestly didn't really consider it. The vinyl siding and the roof has been, I want to say it's probably 12 or 15 years old. It was definitely recent. I usually I've done, as you guys have seen me before, I usually like taking off vinyl siding and trying to restore the clap. But where this was in almost pristine shape, and it is kind of a budget project. I have no problem admitting on that. So I would prefer to leave it.
Do you, in your inspection of the structure, or just in your surveying it, have you seen any deteriorating trim or exterior details that might want to be addressed? I mean, or that should be that could remain as such, but that might be desirable to still treat while you're there on site. I mean, it seems to me that it's an opportunity to make repairs for
So
historic
there's,
structures.
well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Is-
That's all I had to say. That's all.
There is, on the right side, there's a bit of a, they got some granite steps, which actually, I don't think they were granite. I think they were concrete, which are crumbling, and we're gonna replace with granite steps. There's the sidewalks in the street were obviously recently done, and the brick is beautiful. And one side has brick going down about halfway and then concrete. So I intended to bust up the concrete and continue the brick, the same permeable brick from the sidewalk down both sides and along in the back. The back is some pavers that probably reminiscent of the 70s, and they're all mangled up. And so we'd like to replace the pavers and just restore it so it's got a nice patio so that the walkways into the patio look a lot better. Other than that, no, the house is in pretty good shape from interior structure wise and foundation, et cetera. Other than that.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is Glenn. I think that the kind of thing Joe was referring to, like in this picture we're looking at, well, I'm not sure if that entranceway, the treatment of it is original or not. I sort of have my doubts for various reasons, but at any rate, that would be considered the kind of feature he was referring to. Like if there was, if the wood was rotted or anything, it'd be an opportunity to repair it so that it was in good conditions. But it sounds like you're saying your inspection has indicated that that stuff, those features are already in pretty good shape.
Yeah, they are.
Okay, well, let me turn it open to the members of the public.
Actually, Glenn,
Yeah, yes.
if I may.
I'm sure. I'm sorry, Peter. Go ahead.
I just wanted to sort of follow along in Joe's footsteps because it was exactly the same thing I was thinking. I don't know where our jurisdiction ends with regards to this, though. The applicant is coming to us asking about an addition, and along the way, that's going to touch on the siding treatment in that area, obviously.
Right.
But our attention is drawn to the existing siding, which, the vinyl siding is, I do, like the applicant, I love seeing vinyl siding come off of the building. I hate things like as we can see in the upper right of this picture, where a broken pediment has been boxed in for the sake of the vinyl siding, et cetera. We lose detail. In the back, photos of the building, the cedar shingles are in pretty rough shape. Those are the ones that are being replaced, obviously. I just think it's a shame to have a mismatch. This style of building does not lend itself to having a variety of sidings, nor would we want the addition to have vinyl siding put on it. So then I asked the question, does our jurisdiction extend to affecting the existing siding on areas of the house not being modified? And I don't know, but I don't like the idea of the differences in siding, nor would I ever vote in favor of putting vinyl siding on anything.
Okay. I can answer part of that, and I'll probably ask Andy to weigh in on the other part. The part that I feel pretty confident answering is we can have, I don't think there's any issue with us influencing the siding on the part that is planned to be built in the back over that first floor section, the part that has the shingles net today. As far as the, I'd look, it's a gray area how much purview we have in a portion of the structure that he's not making any changes to. Andy, do you have
Yeah.
any feel for that?
Yeah, I would say just generally, it's in releasing the demolition delay that the Historic Commission has some leverage and control over other aspects of the project because, the applicant needs to demonstrate to the Historic Commission to proceed with the demolition that essentially the work will not be a detriment, and that provides sort of a bit of a negotiation back and forth between the commission and the applicant in that scenario. So there is some ability to look at that as in the context of the demolition delay release.
Okay. In other words, yeah, that part of tonight's hearing actually that would come a little later when we review actually it's part of the demo plan review we're having now. So it sounds like, if I understand you, Andy, that that it's not unreasonable for us to, if we feel strongly enough, to make that a condition.
Correct, or maintain the demolition delay.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. All right. Did you? Does that make sense to you, Peter? Do you understand what?
Yes.
Does that answer your question? It's kind of the short answer is yes, but of course, if the applicant is willing to wait 12 months, then they have some liberty to do something else. Okay, so then let me, we have not yet done the public comment period, so let me officially open that. And I think I see a hand raised. So Andy, do you want to, looks like Tom Coulter-John, I think you're enabled on our hand, so let's see if we can hear you tonight.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you fine tonight,
Thank
Tom.
you. Tom Coulter-John, 64 Federal Street, co-president of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. I just have a few suggestions, hopefully to make this project a little better. When I look at the plans for the rear flat roof, it really grates. It's very odd to see a flat roof attached to a historic house. It just doesn't seem to go. And my only suggestion on that, my assumption is that the developer wants to save the windows on the third floor. That's why he didn't put a slope on it. But I'm wondering if there's enough room to perhaps put a low pitched hip roof on that rear instead of flat. That's one idea. Perhaps a hip roof could work on that rear addition. My second comment is that I would love to see the vinyl removed on this entire building. It cries out to return to its original materials, and it is certainly not vinyl. Vinyl tends to rot out buildings, depending upon when it was put on. So I would just love to see that if that's possible. The third suggestion is, and of course you'll do this, is just if you could pin down the details on any changes like the window trims and so forth in your final deliberation. Thank you very much.
Yes, and to that, excuse me, to that last comment, Eric, was there, I don't recall off the top of my head on your plans, was there a, what do they call it, like a schedule of the materials so that it would specify, for example, the windows that will be going into your, the part that you're rebuilding. If we understand correctly, you're not replacing any windows in other than the part you're building, right?
Correct. Well, we may replace ones that are old. There are some older windows in there that may be replaced, but they're going to match whatever that we have in there, which is I think they're 6/6 divided light. And again, the back section would match the same exterior trim, would match whatever we have in the front section. So that again, we weren't changing anything from the front section. If we replace windows, they're going to be the same exact thing that we replace, just newer windows.
Okay, and so they're divided lights. They're not like with those with just the internal separating screen things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And I see another hand raised. We're still in the public comment period. There was another hand raised. Looks like Stephanie Geddes, you want to speak?
Uh, Thank you, Chair Richard. Stephanie Nikitich, 93 High Street. Just one, and this is, I guess this is besides the point at this moment because you did vote that the house is historically significant. But I think that you might have said that it's not contributory, meaning contributory to the Newburyport Historic District and the DCOD. It is. It's on the district data sheets as contributory. So the absence of a Form B doesn't have anything to do with whether or not a building is contributory. So I'm glad you did all vote that it is historically significant because it is contributory to the Newburyport Historic District. Other than that, I very much appreciate the discussion about the exterior materials. And I think that this is a development project, and it's hard for me to imagine that with the real estate prices that this project does not just call out for, if you're allowing for roofline demolition, also call out for you to require that the vinyl be removed and that clapboards be required throughout the building. And I also appreciated very much the suggestion that all materials, including windows, be called out, because while you might hear tonight from the developer that he's doing, true divided light windows, if that's not written down, if there's no specification of that, and it doesn't happen, you have no recourse. So I really do think that the exterior materials to be used should be pinned down as well as possible, and that indeed this building is going through a change for profit. And I think that it's worthwhile to require that it be treated well on the outside. Thank you.
Okay, before you go turn off your microphone, Stephanie, I checked on our website. There's the list of what's it called? Hang on a second. Historic property surveys, and for Hancock Street, it doesn't list any properties on Hancock Street at all as contributing. Is that, are you familiar with the list I'm referring to? I assume it's maybe I'm looking at maybe this is just the ones with Form Bs. Let me see.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the district data sheet on my screen, and it's sheet number 110.
All right.
Hancock Street, page 1 of 3.
Okay. Where are we? Okay. Oh, you said sheet 110?
Sheet 110.
Okay, almost there. 112, where it is, 110. Okay, yes, I was looking in the wrong place. So let's see. Hancock Street, page 103, and it's 7 to 9. Oh, there it is. Yep, double house, circa 1878 Italian. Yep, contributing. Thank you. Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, Ms. Nikitish. We'll make sure I think the listing that I was looking for was just the ones that had a Form B, so-called.
Yeah. I mean, that's okay. The district data sheets are kind of difficult to read. First of all, they start with odd numbered, and then you have to scroll down to get to even numbered. So maybe, I mean, you have a little bit of money right now to improve things. Maybe this could be digitized.
Oh, there's a thought.
Unsearchable.
All right. Well, okay. Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
comments. Okay, back to, let's see, is there any, now, Mr. Coulter John, your hand is still up, but you've already spoken. Is that just an accident of there we go, it's down. Okay, I'll allow another second or two to see if anyone else is going to raise a hand. It doesn't look like anyone is.
One neighbor.
Okay. So there you have, all right, we'll formally, pardon me, close the public comment period rather. The public hearing is still open. And to go back to the board, you heard the comments. You probably already know that the two people that commented are both members of the Newburyport Historic Trust.
Surprise.
Who's whispering? And so, but I think at least one of them echoed comments that I think, Peter, you were making. So anyway, what I want to say, I think what we can do is, I think the best way to go about this is very similar, only slightly different than what we did before, but very similar. We can, the step 2 vote would be, is the structure preferably preserved? Straight up or down vote on that. Do I have, did we, wait a minute, I have, according to my notes, we already took that vote. Did we?
My understanding was you took the vote that it was historically significant and preferably preserved. Am I mistaken?
That's correct.
And
Okay.
considered for preservation.
Correct. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, this is, I think I just copied something. Okay, I see what I did. Yep, it was my mistake then. So the next thing we need to, let me just straighten this out so I don't get further confused in any way here. So you don't mess things up. We keep things on the legal up and up. Just give me a minute to straighten out my notes here so we get everything all set. Okay, so the next vote or the motion should be, is the structure preferably preserved? Does anyone care to make that particular motion? And then we can take a vote after this vote, we can take a vote on the actual demo plan and if we want to impose any conditions to lift the delay.
Is it too late to comment on the comments made from the historic group?
No, it's not too late. We have not, a motion has not been made, and usually we do allow the applicant to respond to public comment after that. So yeah, Eric, you can go ahead and comment.
Okay, I was just curious where you were mentioning that, or one of you guys were mentioning having two different sidings. Well, if I took the vinyl off and replaced it with clap and I had cedar in the back, I'd still have two different sidings, wouldn't I?
Yes, you would.
Right. So, and to the woman who was talking about, based on the fact that, we're doing this for profit, we're doing this obviously, to develop a house for people to live in, as it's quite unlivable now. And we're doing it so that we could actually get a bathroom in a sleeping area, in a bed area, so people don't have to come into the kitchen to go to the bathroom. So that really, that is the only thing I'm asking the second floor on. It's I think we've got about, 17 by 12 on each side. So it's under a little over 200 square feet for each side of the house that I'm adding. The hip roof, I mean, there are plenty of flat roofs in this town. Not to say that a hip roof, but yeah, the idea of the flat roof was to keep the windows up there.
Mm-hmm.
That's about it, I guess.
Okay. All right. And we can discuss some more of those, and depending on the result of the vote on the preferably preserved or not. Is there a motion made to that it's preferably preserved?
I'll make that motion. This is
Okay,
Peter.
that was Peter. Okay. Okay, is there a second?
Second it. This is Joe.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So we'll go around. Mark Syndrome.
Yes.
Okay, Peter McNamee.
Yes.
Hang on a second. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair is yes. So the final vote would be about okay, so at the moment, that imposes a 12-month demo delay, during which time we can consider your plans and consider if we are approve them as is or want to um, uh, impose certain changes or conditions. So that's where we are right now. And with a little bit of luck, we might be able to resolve that tonight, so you don't have to come back again to get the okay to go ahead, Mr. Primack. So the concerns I heard, and let me first comment on the siding issue. As far as the part that you're building up in the back, it would be quite consistent to have a later addition in the rear of a structure such as that to be sided differently than the front section, especially where it's set in. It's obviously, something that's been added on. That would be fine, I think, to have. Yes, that's two different treatments on one house, but it's quite common, in fact, historically preferred in some, well, depending on the situation, I guess I should say, to have on differences like that. And in fact, on my block, there are two houses that have cedar siding shakes, or cedar shingles, I should say, on the weather side, the kind of the northwest side where we tend to get the heavy weather from, and the rest is clapboards, and that was not uncommonly done. Just as an example, but I diverse. So that's, I don't think that's particularly an issue. I think it wasn't clear if you meant that, I guess when you said you could do vinyl siding in the back, that you would do the whole back and not leave any of the shingles there. That would certainly look odd to have the first floor be shingled and the second floor be collaborated with siding or whatever. No one is questioning your right to turn a profit, certainly, regarding some of the comments made, but I think that the gist of it was that any change to a property, so, your change is not dramatic. I would agree with that, but it's also an opportunity to not just make it not not just to have it be less objectionable, but maybe to even improve it, and to have your whatever it is you're doing to the property, that you can come away, and that owners can feel that they've got something that is makes a positive impact on the local neighborhood. So those are kind of my comments. What does the board think? I heard a couple people comment on the vinyl siding. To maybe help expedite things, what we could do is we could have a motion to lift the demo delay, given the condition that the materials be specified in like a scheduled material, so we know what the siding is specifically going to be, what the windows are specifically going to be, and so on. It's quite customary to even give the manufacturer and model of the windows that are going to be used and so on. That's not unreasonable, and it's usually done. And if we want to impose a condition of removing the vinyl siding, we could do that. So what do you guys think? Is there a strong enough feeling that you feel that that's what the board would like to see done? Anyone? Joe?
Well,
I think Mark had his hand up first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll make a quick comment on the vinyl siding. I certainly would encourage the change to regular clapboards, just because of the fact that over time, those vinyl sidings are bad for the house in general. So for the future, it certainly would be a good thing. The other issue is I wanted to bring up is the issue of the flat roof, which I can understand as somewhat expeditious, but I do share what Mr. Coulter-John mentioned and his thought about the hip roof, which might be maybe a little more aesthetically pleasing.
Yep. Okay. And I see a couple of more hands up. So I think, sorry, Mark, your background color is similar to the hand. That's why I didn't see you before I saw Joe. It says contrasts more. So Joe, why don't you go ahead and speak? And then I see Peter as well.
I just did the painting.
Yeah.
Huh? Who,
Excuse me?
yeah, Joe, you have the
Yeah,
floor.
okay, yes, sorry, yes, thank you. So I agree with Mark, although my focus is really on the front portion of the building. I don't think as a historical commission, we can really not put some pressure here to influence the applicant to change out the materials that are street side here. And I understand that there's the substantial cost here. It's a big house. And you're talking about a front and two sides, and the gable behind. There's a lot of surface area there. I think I think we have to do what we have to do as a historical commission and say that if we allow the addition to the building, then we also have to request that the exterior be restored, the portions that are visible to the street.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Peter, comment?
Yes. There's been mention a couple of times, Mr. Ketich brought up the notion of the profit that may be or may not be turned as a result of the work on this house. And that's certainly an important consideration for whoever is doing the work. It can't be a consideration of this commission. That's not in our purview. So the fact that the applicant may be making some money off of the work that is being done on the property is, that terrific. Make as much money as you possibly can. I'm fine with that. It's not really our business how much money is being made. Our business is to safeguard the historical integrity of the city, one building at a time. And here we do have a building, on the back of the building. Let's talk about the roof, the flat roof. I'm not a fan of the flat roof either, but I'm willing to be a little more forgiving on that because it is at the back of the building. It's not as visible. I think Mr. Coulter-John's recommendation or suggestion for a low hip roof is a good one, and I think it's well intentioned. I don't think it would have any effect. I don't think anyone would ever really see that or that it would register if they did see it. So, going up another story and making this house livable with bathroom facilities on the second floor, I'm all for it, even though I don't like the flat roof. However, doing the work on the house, going up on the back straight up and creating that block in the back with the flat roof and keeping this this existing siding is a problem. So I'm strongly in favor of seeing the siding go, seeing the specified bill of materials, what is being used, what is being proposed for the work, and imposing the demo delay until such is reviewed.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. And yeah, and it's funny. Well, it's not funny. Andy, can you show that the proposed rear elevation again on the plans here? I'm not sure which one it is. It might be slide 10, I think.
Let's see here.
Looks like slide 10. Looking at your little thumbnails on the left there. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I thought of that too. That I think what Mr. Coulter was envisioning was a very low hip roof, that the peak of or ridge of which would be about the height of the sill or the stool of those two upper windows. And yeah, aesthetically, it would be better that it would be so shallow that I think your point's pretty well taken, Peter, that it's kind of arguable if it's worth would probably be considerably more expensive to do that given the kind of framing that would require compared to a slightly sloped. We say it's flat, but it actually has a slight slope for rainwater runoff. So yeah,
Correct.
I take your point on that. Was that you, Eric, saying?
Yeah, I was just saying it's correct, right? It's got to
Yeah.
be pitched back for runoff.
Right. Peter, your hand is still up. Did you have anything else, or were you okay? All right. Well, we heard from everyone, and I
Can I say something about the issue with possible issue with the siding? I mean, obviously, everyone knows how much construction costs have gone up due to COVID, right? If I pull the siding off and the clap is in good shape and I can scrape it and paint it, I have no problem with that. The problem becomes if I take it off and it is all rotted, having to then redo the whole house and clap and then paint it afterwards. That's a significant cost. And I know that, you guys don't have to take consideration, a profit or why someone is doing a project, but it becomes the point of that, no, you wouldn't do the project. The house would stay as is and you wouldn't do anything to it. And, it would be much harder for people to turn over these houses and for somebody like me or someone else to buy into it and do the repairs because it becomes cost prohibitive. If you can't do it at a certain rate and certainly make a certain margin, there's no sense doing it. A lot of times people purchase these houses on contingencies that they get an approved plan. And if they don't get the plan, there's no sense doing the house. And if they can't do the house, then the house is going to remain the same and the siding is going to stay on it. So again, I don't mind taking a look at it and doing, as I said, every house that I've done so far, I've pulled off vinyl siding and redone the clap. And I prefer to do it too. But this is, it's definitely a budgetary house. It's a small footprint. It's a small house. There's no parking. There's not a lot to it. Just all the costs keep going up and it's just tougher to do. So that's the only reason. Otherwise, I would be more than happy to, take it off, remove it, replace it, whatever needed to be done. And then you're just going to have, the costs are going to be passed on to the consumer. Same thing, which is what's raising all the prices in the city as well. So just something to take into consideration is all. But
Okay.
I don't have a problem trying to remove the siding, looking at it, see what's underneath, and if it's decent to redo it.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. And I hope that's not too informal of me to call you by your first name.
Not
I
at all.
tend to be a relatively informal guy. So I'm thinking, Eric, why don't we take a motion to continue your matter to the next meeting, which I believe is the 13th of May. That will give you time to do two things. You can conduct some investigation of what you've got underneath the vinyl, and would also give you time to provide the materials details that have been referred to by a number of folks, including myself, that we would like to see, specifically, just to call out on the materials as to, what windows and siding material you want to use. I would say that our expectation is that rear section would be cedar shingles, for that rear, the two-story rear thing at the completion of your project, and not more vinyl siding.
Correct.
So, any feelings from either the board or Eric? It sounds like that was kind of what you were suggesting. Is the board amenable to that? Okay. All right. Technically, it's not even really a continuation. Well, I mean, right, Andy, it's not really a continuation. We've taken the vote and we have the demo delay. So right now the demo delay is in effect. So but we can just put you on the agenda for the 13th of May to come back and with any details added to your plans and any report on what you've been able to determine with the siding. That sound okay?
That sounds fine.
Okay. So, and Andy, does that sound like
Yep,
something that makes sense? Okay.
makes sense. Yep.
Okay. All right. So I want to close this particular matter. Any other, is the board good with that plan? Looks like, okay, good. Okay. Very good. All right. Let me just make a few notes here because I like, if I don't do this while we go along, things can get lost. So just let me take a few notes here. Okay. Okay. Now there was another item on the agenda. Do you still have the agenda handy, Andy?
Yeah, sorry. Let me just switch
Sure.
over to that.
Yep, no problem. And now Eric, I see your hand is raised. Did you need to say
Oh, no.
something? Or oh, okay. All right. And Andy, can you mute Eric's mic too? Okay, so the 10 Auburn Street discussion, the applicant there, that actually it's Chuck Griffin. He's asked to put this off. Was he going to plan to come back the 13th as well, Andy? Is that the idea?
It's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
And yeah, I think you'll have an update at that point. And I did discuss with him this matter and suggested he not do any further work or anything like that until he's further discussed the matter with the commission. So
Right. So if anyone is has any questions as to what this is about, there's a preservation restriction on this property. This is the old jail properties, I should say. And he wanted to erect a kind of a little screen there in front of one of those protected buildings, which is contrary to the preservation restriction, which usually requires the preserved buildings, the buildings subject to the PR to be visible. Anyway, so that's what that's all about. So the only thing left then is to approve the minutes, and the chair does not have any updates. So why don't we go to the approval of the minutes? Is there a motion by someone here to approve the minutes as per draft that was submitted by our fearless note taker?
I will move to approve the minutes.
Thank you,
This
Mr.
is Joe.
Morgan. Thank you, Joe. Yep, and the chair will go ahead and second that to save time. So, Mark, you good?
Yes.
Okay, and I saw your note, so we'll make sure that your name is spelled correctly. Peter.
Yes.
Okay, Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm good with those as well. Thanks to our note taker Gretchen, she's been doing a great job. Unless there's something else that somebody has, actually, there is one brief update, I should say, from the chair. Very, very briefly. Patricia and I and others, Andy and Caitlin, to be specific, we're continuing to chug away a bit, probably Patricia doing the most chugging, as it were, on this project to update the preservation, not the Form Bs, the list of contributing structures, and so on. We have that grant, so we are moving forward, and I think we're getting pretty close to having a request for some what's it called? Request for proposals, I think, RFP to send out. So hopefully we're getting to that pretty soon. So do keep that on your radar, so to speak. Let's not forget about that and think about how we want to proceed with that. But basically, I think we're going to finally make that happen. So that's the only update.
Chair Richards,
Yes.
this is Joe.
Yep.
How do you see the commissioners helping on this? You mentioned that a couple
Yes.
of times. What is the method or process that you're thinking of?
Yep. The main thing that we're thinking where you guys, or us guys, I should say, would be helpful is there's a piece that would save a lot of time on the part of the consultant. We're going to hire a consultant to actually write up the Form Bs. You have to write up a Form B in order to get the thing on the list. So that's kind of the procedure, right? And there is the standards for the Form Bs apparently have gotten more stringent over the years. So it's good to have someone who is quite familiar with them and knows how to do them, can do them expeditiously. But where we can save time is rather than just kind of give them a blank slate or whatever, we want to give them, okay, we've identified some hot prospects here. Okay, so if you, in your walkabouts the city, or just anything you've noticed or come across in your travels, or just any thoughts on where you think we should kind of focus the consultants. Okay, we think there's a group of buildings here on this street that's underrepresented in the list that we really need to get on board, or that type of thing is what I'm mostly looking for. Just helping to identify target structures, or if there's a structure that maybe is on the list but not their accessory building, but there's an accessory building that we think we want to save, that's also a possibility.
Can I ask you, is there a document, I think you might have mentioned it earlier, that correlates the Form Bs to the district data sheets so that, we understand which properties in the district data sheets do not have Form Bs?
Well, if they're on the district data sheet, in a way, we don't need to worry about the Form B, because that's what our local ordinance uses to determine whether it's protected. It uses the district data sheets. So if it's on there with a C for contributing, it's protected, regardless of whether it has a Form B or not. However, if we need to add something to that list, which we want to do, the way to do that is via a Form B. Apparently, this is how. Is that correct, Andy? To your
Chair, could I speak to that?
Sure.
And I just want to make sure everybody knows the resources. It's actually, I wanted to mention something else related to this. What you should see on the screen today or right now is on the city's website. Underneath the Historic Commission, the historic property surveys, and I think that Stephanie had mentioned these earlier tonight. You should all be familiar with this particular page on the city's website and probably referencing it on a regular basis. Because, as Glenn pointed out, there are the district data sheets, which is, as Glenn pointed out, that's where you're going to find the table with the inventory by street, an indication as to whether or not it's a contributing structure. But you're also going to find where we have Form Bs in the listing by street. So you can, shortcut your way there, but basically you're going to go by street. So I guess in essence, I would just say, like Glenn said, look to this page and the district data sheets in particular, and then further down for the Form Bs, which we basically scanned in the paper copies we have. And we supplement that. I think on this particular project, the two things that are most important for the commission to do, that can't be done directly by the staff or the consultant, is just prioritizing so that we get the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak, out of the consultants in terms of number of properties and which ones are most important, or structures are most important to get listed and preserved in some way. And then also when we get the Form Bs drafted back from the consultant, to review those and advise if there's any concerns about the information presented, the accuracy, or content or anything that else should be in there.
Yeah, and before I forget, Andy, I think Diane in your office there did a map that shows all the structures that are old, 75 years old or older, or something like that, with color coded as to which ones were or weren't covered. I know that was I remember seeing that. Is that posted on the website anywhere? Or
I don't believe it's posted on the website. I will not be, if you're interested in following up with Diane or Caitlin tomorrow, I will not be in the office, but if you send an email to Diane, she can, you can either have that posted or just distributed to the commission members via email. We can take a look at that. That was meant to be, it's sort of a correlation between the listing and
right.
the assessor's GIS map, so you can kind of color code and kind of see where things are. There might be a few discrepancies here and there in the linking of the data, but basically it's going to give you some indication.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful.
Stephanie Nikotich mentioned the entering these things into a database. I mean, merging these two databases would be just like, wow, it would be perfect, wouldn't it, for the next time that people do this?
Yeah, no, we'll get to that. We'll take a look. It's a good point. As we'll try to digitize essentially what is shown on these PDFs. But again, And certainly we can work on that. The bottom line is though, it is all there. So if you scroll to your pages in the district data sheets, even though it's a scanned copy, you're going to see that information. We can do our best to, convert that into a Excel spreadsheet or something that's a little more legible and faster to sort through. But again, as far as the raw information is in there in the scanned versions that we have posted.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Well, there are 326 sheets of district data sheets. Of course, they're not all necessarily full, although most of them are. So yeah, and it's basically laid out like a spreadsheet with columns for street address, map and parcel, and so on. So it would really lend itself to being transformed into.
Yeah, I'll follow that up on that internally. We'll definitely get that done. I just the question of how long it'll take us to do it.
Yeah.
So, and how quickly or conveniently we can do it automated. So, so we can certainly do that. I'll follow up on that. I also, one of the things I've been doing with PDFs in general is just doing optical character recognition so that it tends to reduce the file sizes, which I noticed if you're downloading all the district data sheets is a pretty big file. So it can reduce the file size, but also make it text searchable.
Right.
I'll follow up with Diane on that, and we'll see in addition to doing that, if we can get it converted to a spreadsheet that's a little more legible and faster to scan through.
Yeah, what was I gonna say? We don't, this, just looking at the typeface here, it looks like this was not something that was done on a word processing. There's no file of this. It was just actually just printed on paper. Is that right, Andy?
Yeah, I believe actually on typewriter where the forms were typewriter on. So, again, we can do some optical character recognition to make it, a little more searchable, but at the end of the day, there's still a little bit of work involved. So we'll do our best to convert that, certainly make it text searchable, first off, and then try to get it converted to a table, which is take a little bit longer, to make sure we have it accurate.
Okay, and Joe, to your question about correlation, I believe on the district data sheet there is in the same box as the frame, there's Becky, can you just click that link, Andy? It'd be easy to show that. Just click the link there for district data sheets.
Yeah, sorry. Did you want me to highlight it or what was
no, just click on it. So it opens that PDF file.
Oh yeah, sorry. So if I click on this, it's going to take, just to be clear, it's going to take a second to download, but
that's okay. And then just go a page or two down so we can see what it looks like.
Yeah. So you'll see this is, I'm just expanding this view a little bit, but these are basically 8 by 11 pages that have been scanned in. So there's the cover page that gives you information, but these are the typical sheets you're looking at. By street name, by street address. You can look at the numbers. I would, we have to pay attention to see sometimes there's a misalignment of the number, the map and lot or something, but just because of the passage of time or some discrepancy. But if you look through the street addresses, check that whole street, as you're looking through, they're alphabetical. But if you see a property in here, it's going to indicate, like Glenn said on the right side, whether it's contributing, intrusive, or otherwise.
And I think, Andy, those numbers that were handwritten in, like 2641 in the bottom there, I believe that's the number of the Form B. So where there is a number like that should mean that there is a Form B. If there is no number written in like that, then the Form B is not done. That's, I'm pretty sure that's the case.
I'm not sure, Glenn. I think
no?
I have that sheet for our street. There is no Form B for my house, and there is a number written next to my house.
All right, then maybe that means something else. So much for that theory, huh? I was hoping it would.
Andy, do you know what the numbers are?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear that question, but just to be clear, you can check this same webpage that the district data sheets are posted on to see if there's a Form B for a given address by checking that listing. So,
right. On the district data sheets, Andy, those handwritten numbers that Glenn was just referring to, do you know what those are?
I don't recall whether that is that's the indication or whether it's accurate either. Again, I would go back to what we have posted here. I don't know that I would go off of whether or not there's a number in that column that's handwritten or not.
So we don't know what that number references.
I don't know off the top of my head. We can check and verify what that is coming from, but I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. Thanks.
Hey, Andy, could you click on 5 Ashland Court there? that first one on that page. Just want to see if this has a number, because that there's on the sheet.
Form number 231.
Oh, okay, yeah, and on the, if you go back to the district data sheet, you'll see that it has a number 231. So at least in some, I guess those 3-digit numbers anyway, apparently do refer to those. You see the, yeah, go down to, you're on Allen Street. You got to go down to Ashland. It's a couple pages down. Oh, all right, there you go. You're on Ashland Street, but this was Ashland Court actually. So you got to go back up. Yeah, keep going up. There you go. See the 231?
Oh yeah, I see. Yep.
Yeah. So at least so I guess those 3-digit numbers anyway. See, you know, some of them do refer to the Form B anyway. Anyway, it's.
I may have misread mine.
Okay. Or well, there's other numbers like those 4-digit numbers. I have no idea what those mean. So. Anyway, more evidence that there's work to be done here, right? All right. Thanks, Andy, for helping us out with that.
Yeah,
Okay.
could I mention, I had just maybe an update or something worth mentioning as well before you
Sure.
adjourn tonight?
Yep.
Just again, looking at the city's website, just another resource that I noticed, you know, each boarding commission of the city, you know, there's sort of fluctuations that happen over time as to how well the board of commissions members know their own regulations or, follow, what procedures to follow. And there's a refresher that happens, periodically for various different reasons, including the change of membership that periodically happens. And so I mentioned or I wanted to highlight this particular page on the city's website, which is a meeting. I was just pulling this up based on the discussion tonight. I noticed that there were sometimes some hesitations about, getting agreement or consensus on, again, circling back to the flow diagram of the permit process. What is the commission's role or step at a given point and what should be done next? And I find that comes up on a regular basis, perhaps more so with the historic commission than some others. There are some others where this happens, but I noticed particularly with the historic commission, this comes up more frequently. So one of the things I wanted to suggest was if commission members now and or in the future, and we can continue to point to this, but Councilor Eigenman, who was involved with updating some of the ordinances, these important ordinances that this commission works with, took the time on this night of June 11th, it looks like that far back, it's surprising to think it was that far back, but June 11th, 2020. And it's on the city's website. If you look there, you'll see that we have a recording link as well, which will take you to the YouTube channel that we've created for the Office of Planning and Development and the boards and committees that we work with. And that in turn will take you to this YouTube page where you can see, this is just a slide, one of the slides, but basically it's the whole meeting is recorded. We've been posting those so folks can access prior, boarding commission meetings. But the reason I point that out is because it would be helpful perhaps for commission members periodically, or particularly for new members, to look at that presentation that's at the end of this meeting, because he goes through and quite thoroughly summarizes the commission's powers and duties with some helpful slides. We can also distribute the slides, and we can follow up and make sure that they're posted and distributed to the members, just to be clear. But I watching that presentation and hearing the dialogue, I think might also be helpful too, as a sort of a refresher or whatnot. It will help, I think, to speed up your meetings and to make things a little more efficient, and also to help you feel as individual members and collectively more confident when you're dealing with your ordinance procedures and potential disputes or debates with applicants.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Good. It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
That's all I had to say. I just wanted to offer that as a resource.
Yep.
Andy,
Yeah.
you mentioned distributing that slideshow. Is that not posted already somewhere?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I missed. I couldn't.
Yeah,
hear
This is the slideshow that was presented on June 11th last year.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, it should be. Peter, by the way, your audio is really poor. It breaks up a lot. But anyway, it's like all choppy. But anyway, yes, if you go to that, it should be posted with that agenda, right, Andy? Like if you clicked on that agenda link right where your cursor is now.
Yeah. So when we look at, you click on that link as typical, and you get to this next page that shows a summary of various documents that are associated with that particular agenda. And as Glenn mentioned, that is one of your subsets of that agenda. So review of NHC powers and duties is right there. And again, that's the whole,
Right.
it's referred to as a handbook, but it's sort of like a slideshow. And that is in fact there. So we can, we can have a more direct link to it, you know, rather than the meeting date per se, just to be sure. But, but in either case, I think that's a great resource for the commission members to refresh on a regular basis or update new members that are coming in so they know the full scope of their powers and duties.
Yeah. Got that, Peter?
Yeah, thank
Great.
you.
Sure. Good question. Okay. Is there anyone interested in making a motion to adjourn?
Mark Sendrin's been yawning a lot I think he'll make the motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. It was a very good meeting. Thank you.
Okay. I'm glad you haven't been catching my attempts to stifle my yawns. I was up very early this morning, so I'm past my bedtime, so to speak. Okay. There's a motion to adjourn. Is it seconded?
Second.
Okay, it is. Okay, Mr. Sendron.
Yes, please.
Oui. Peter McNamee,
Yes.
Joe Morgan,
Yes.
Yabul, and me, yes. Okay, so we are formally and legally adjourned the meeting. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you, Andy, for hosting. And I think that's it for today. We'll see you all in, actually, it's closer to 3 weeks, I think, the way the calendar works, to May 13th. Or is it? Anyway, whatever it is, 2 or 3 weeks, we'll see you again.
Okay.
I,
Thank
all.
you. Good night, everyone. Take
Okay.
care.
Good night.